You're listening to 91.7 FM, WSUW, in Whitewater, Wisconsin. You're listening to 91.7 FM, WSUW in Whitewater, Wisconsin. This is Rashkin Report, and I'm your host, YURI Rashkin. I'm excited to be joined next by YURI FELSHTINSKY. YURI is an author of a long list of books, many of which are centered on the history of Russian clandestine service. So I think this is an amazing opportunity, considering that here in America we are dealing with Russian clandestine involvement on all sorts of levels, and not so clandestine. I'm excited to welcome Yuri back to the program.
Thank you.
Well, the topics that I would like to cover, I'll just kind of cover them, just go over them briefly so our audience knows what they're in for. Wanted to discuss with you the Russian danger and kind of get your take on how serious you feel the situation is right now in the middle of June 2017. Then I wanted to get your take on Russian ties to, it seems like the FBI director, Trump's lawyer, all these people have Trump ties. The next, I wanted to talk to you about Sessions' testimony, perhaps touch on the NSA hacking before the election that seems to, no, I'm sorry, Russian hacking that NSA report has told us about that took place before the election. And then we'll see if we have any time left after that, because these are big Washington Post, New York Times articles for each one of those. So let's begin with the general sense of what do you feel about the level of the Russian danger that we're currently facing? Is this something where we are overstating it because Russia is a weak country with an economy the size of Italy? Or is it important to pay attention to it and continue to pay attention to it?
Well, I think, first of all, when Putin came to power in 2000, we underestimated the potential danger of former FSB director and former KGB officer coming to power in Russia and controlling Russia. And for many years, we were hoping that Putin came to power in Russia not as a former KGB officer, but as a young progressive political leader who would strategically try to move Russia closer to Europe. And comparatively quickly, historically speaking, not only we realized that the FSB as a structure took control over the country, because Putin started to promote to major government and political positions KGB officers very quickly. And they effectively took control all over Russia, because you could dig into any institution, any company, any bank, any major newspaper, major TV station. You will see KGB officers, former KGB officers, ruling the business, ruling the company on a very high level, vice presidents, chairman of board of directors, etc. So they are there, and we are talking about dozens of thousands of people. So not only
dozens of thousands.
Oh yes. KGB was a huge organization, and there were, thousands and thousands and thousands of people who effectively were released into civil section of the developing Russian economy. Under developing, I mean market. Developing economy, market economy, because prior to 91 in the Soviet Union, there were no market economy. And when market economy started to develop, this was a calculated decision by the FSB to release their officers into civil sector. The same way the KGB would send spies abroad working undercover or placing them as sleepers. The same strategy, the same tactic was used within the borders of the Russian Federation after 91. And all those people, quietly existed from 91 to 2000. And then in 2000, when Putin took the leadership and became president of Russia, all those people basically announced themselves as former officers. And again, you may look at the list of people who are in State Duma, we may look at the list of people who are controlling government. We will see them, and this is not a secret anymore. I mean, from 91 to 99, this was kind of secret. Now, it's not secret anymore. Now the FSB basically is saying openly that yes, we control the country. Yes, our officers are in charge of major companies of the Russian Federation. That's how it is. So it's not by chance that people like Igor Sechin are controlling Rosneft, for example. It's not by chance. That's the basic rule of today's economy and today's politics in Russia. Now, by itself, it was not clear whether this is good or bad. At least since this was the first time in human history when secret police started to rule the country, people both in Russia and outside Russia didn't actually know what this means. Unfortunately, after a short period of comparatively quiet and peaceful time from 2000 to 2008, Russia started to move towards openly aggressive behavior. In 2008, they invaded Georgia. This was the first time since the collapse of the Soviet Union when foreign Russian troops were used abroad. In 2014, Russia invaded Ukraine. And after 2014, I believe it became clear to everybody that the regime or the government which Putin created in Russia with the help of the FSB as the institution, that this regime is very dangerous. So since 2014, the attitude towards Russia changed, definitely. At the same time, the world had to watch if Russia would continue this open aggression, like continuing, for example, to occupy regions of Ukraine which were not occupied in the spring of 2014, whether Russia would try to invade the Baltic states, whether Russia would occupy Belarus, etc., or whether this was a short episode of aggression which will die quietly. Now, again, up to 2016, we were thinking that this is a kind of short episode and Russia probably would not invade further into Ukraine, would not invade into the Baltic states, etc. But in 2016, when Russia, started its involvement into American elections, we realized that Putin just changed the method of conquering the world. And instead of taking territories like in 2008 and 2014, they decided to repeat what they've done in 2000 in Russia. In 2000 in Russia, KGB occupied the chair of the president of the country. I mean, from the point of view of the FSB, this was the most successful operation. They placed its agent, its officer, Vladimir Putin, who was lieutenant colonel those days, to rule the country. And basically, they were trying to repeat the same operation with the same success in Europe. Now, we have suspicion that in a couple of countries in Europe, Eastern Europe, they succeeded because we do have couple presidents who are, unfortunately and suspiciously like Putin very much and have good relations with Putin. At the same time, we see situations which you would not imagine like 10, 20 years ago when people like former Chancellor of Germany, Schroeder, actually is getting money from Gazprom, which is a Russian state company, and is on friendly terms with Putin when they are spending time together in sauna, or we are seeing former Prime Minister Berlusconi from Italy traveling to Crimea, suspiciously having, again, good time with Putin when Crimea was just occupied by Russian troops. I mean, this is all very unusual, and this is again a part of this operation to conquer territory, not with the army, but with different tools, with money as well, of course. And unfortunately, we've seen this attempt to take control over the leadership of the countries in places like France, where Russia tried to, help Le Pen to become president of France. We probably missed some victories of Putin. We do know more about defeats, right? There was a defeat in France with Le Pen. There obviously was a defeat in Chernogorия with the attempt of the KGB to organize a coup there and replace the government. From their point of view, from Russian point of view, from Putin point of view, they were trying, of course, to prevent Chernogorия entering NATO. But then finally, we realized that Russia is trying to be involved into elections in the United States. And not only they tried to be involved, but they succeeded. And I actually call this operation the most successful operation of the FSB since 2000, when Russia placed the agent Vladimir Putin as president of Russia. I have to say this openly, that I consider Mr. Trump to be Putin's agent who was placed as the president of the United States.
Yuri, I have a question I'd like to clarify with you. I've heard people say that because the FSB operation about placing Trump in charge of the United States has become public, that by itself means that the operation failed. Do you view it that way or not?
Partially. At this point, partially. Because we do not actually know who wins this battle. It's just starting. What we see is just the beginning. Because my approach to the problem is a professionally the picture first, and then kind of collect the puzzle and all pieces of information so far which comes to us about Trump and Russian involvement and some people who suspiciously had relations with the Russian government, etc., etc. All those pieces, for me, are actually the right pieces from this puzzle when I see a major operation, right, placing an agent as the president of the United States. Americans, if we talk about journalists, they use completely different approach. They look at that piece from that puzzle and try to figure out, well, where is that puzzle where this piece should go? I mean, we have many of them. And that's why it's very difficult for a journalist who are dealing with each particular episode or each particular small piece of information, smallest piece of information, to find the right puzzle. I already have this right puzzle in front of me, so it's much easier for me to come to conclusions. Well, of course, you could say that how do you know that your puzzle is the correct puzzle? But that's what I think, because so far not a single piece of information which we collect goes against the theory that Trump is Putin agent. There is nothing what Trump have done or have said so far which goes against this theory. But once again, we are just in the beginning of the uh, struggle, because for me everything is clear, but for American public opinion and for American politicians and for American law enforcement agencies, it's not a clear picture at all. This is a picture which should be investigated.
Is it because of the different level of proof that they're using, and you're relying more on their reputation, and then the difference, or there's also idea of connecting the dots. So I'm kind of curious, why is the American media struggling, or maybe it's not struggling anymore, to connect the dots while they're so clear? Maybe you're just more steeped into this tea, and so things are more clear to you. I don't know.
Well, I think they're clear to me. It's not just because I'm from Russia and Russia is my specialty, and KGB and the current Russian government is my specialty as well. It's not because I'm good in connecting dots. I am, but it's also because I'm really, I have to say it, freelance. I have no bosses and no editors above me, and I do not have a situation, uh, and that's what I hear very often recently when I talk to journalists, when I talk to journalists, newspaper journalists, to editors, that, well, my editor will not allow this to be printed, or my boss will not allow this to be broadcast. You see, I work under different rules. I'm freelance and I'm free to say what I want. They are not. Even those people who work for CNN, for Fox, for NBC, ABC, they whether this is good or bad, it's another story. Maybe it's good, but they're not allowed to say what they very often would like to say. That's why we are in different situation, and my situation in this sense is easier.
You're listening to 91.7 FM WSUW in Whitewater, Wisconsin. This is Rashkin Report, and I'm your host, Yuri Rashkin. My guest today is author, historian Yuri Felshtinsky, and we're speaking about Russian ties that are binding the United States these days. Yuri, so those Russian ties, we have new, supposedly, a person nominated to lead the FBI. We have Trump's lawyer. All of those seem to have connections to Kremlin in a way that they are all working for law firms that represent large Russian corporations. So back to KGB, that follows pretty directly. Um, when we spoke in the past, you were optimistic that there's only a handful of people in Washington that have those Kremlin connections. It seems that handful is slowly growing. And do you feel that the Kremlin is getting involved in American politics by looking to buy American politicians?
Well, they effectively trying to use money with some success. I do not think that we are in a situation which is worse now than it was in on 20th of January. I think the major battle which we won is with General Flynn, who was basically discovered as an agent. People still have suspicion, do not know really whether he is Turkish agent or Russian agent, but one way or
That's a
another,
good point.
it became clear that a person who receives $600,000 from foreign countries or agents or operatives cannot be a national security advisor of president. But the point is that we see even now that Trump is defending Flynn by all means,
Right.
and I'm quite sure that he has reasons for this. And that's the major problem. First of all, I think that both Flynn and Tillerson was selected for these positions, for their positions, by Kremlin, not by Trump. I think that Flynn, of course, knows enough about Trump's involvement into the whole affair, and this information is very damaging for Trump. And the reason that Trump is defending Flynn by all means, very risky means for him, by the way, because he's risking impeachment because of his defense of Flynn. That this is happening because Trump has no choice. Because if Flynn opens his mouth and tells what he knows, I think the days of Trump in the White House are over. And we still do not know how this will develop with Flynn. But I think what we do know, of course, that he broke the law. I mean, whether you are sympathizing to him or not, he still broke the law. I think the information which we know about Flynn definitely indicates that he was working on behalf of the Russian government as an agent. I cannot believe that he is so naive that starting getting money from Russia, a lot of money, in August 15, he would never think about the fact that it's not fine for a former active general and future national security advisor to take money from Russia. So I think this kind of situations are black and white. I think another issue, a major one, is the sale of property of Trump in 2008 to Russian billionaire Rybolovlev, when a property which was bought by Trump for $41 million in 2004 was sold in 2008 when the market actually went down with a profit of $54 million. I think this was a form of bribe, or form of payment to Donald Trump, and this is the case which was mentioned by American press, but it was never actually investigated. What happened to this money, for example, how this money was used, etc., etc. I think the fact that Donald Trump Jr., his son, at the same time was traveling to Moscow regularly. This is period of 2008. He was in Moscow 6 times during this period when again the market in the United States went down and there was a great of need of money.
It's not just a cheap vacation.
This was not definitely vacation. You would not travel to Russia, just to spend time there. This is just to open. Until I think the fact that on October 11th, if I'm correct, 2016, again, Donald Trump Jr. traveled to Paris to meet pro-Russian Syrian politicians, and presumably even was getting money for this trip. Again, it was in the press that he received around $50,000 to go to Paris to meet that particular Syrian oppositionist, quote-unquote oppositionist, because this is pro-Moscow and pro-government opposition of Syria. I mean, there is a lot of going on, and we know all this ridiculous stories about meeting with the Russian ambassador Kislyak by like everybody, and this is ridiculous, because why would you need to do this? I mean, why Kushner would need to meet Russian ambassador? I mean, this is a country, as you said, with the level
the size of Italy.
Italy, right? So he did not go to meet ambassador of Italy, I'm sure. He went to see Kislyak. He then went to see Galkov. No, Galkov is not only the manager of the major Russian government bank, WEB, but but Garkov is also an officer of KGB who officially finished Academy of KGB as FSB in 1998. I mean, he is FSB officer who was placed by Putin to be in charge of the bank, which is typical, as I noticed before, that we see a lot of KGB officers controlling major structures like banks, oil companies, gas companies, etc. I mean, why would you do this? There is no explanation unless all of those people were sent by Trump to discuss particular issues. There is no reason for them to go to talk to Kislyak, and I doubt that this was Kushner's initiative and that Trump was not involved. So all this will lead us to Donald Trump. There is no way he is not involved. There is no way he is not in charge. It's his operation, and the problem is for Trump that by now he's completely controlled by Kremlin, by Putin. I mean, if in the beginning of this operation, whenever it started, it probably started much earlier than we think, it was an operation without probable success or possible success, and probably not too many people in Moscow were hoping that Trump would become president. When Trump became the president, unfortunately for him, this was the moment when he actually became 100% agent control, 100% by Moscow. And that's what it is now.
So they were more willing to let him do whatever he wanted when it didn't look like he might win. And once he became an official, the highest official in the land, at that point, he loses, in your opinion, all matter of choice. But he attacked Syria's airport or whatever that was, the flying strip, landing strip, and supposedly that was something that Russians didn't like. And he does these things that Kremlin seems to be upset about. Do you not worry about that?
Well, no, because you see, if you look at Syria, for Russia, Syria is just a playground where they will, test new weapons, try to cause troubles to Europe and to the United States. I mean, we do not really seriously believe that Putin cares about Syria. He doesn't. What's important for Putin, of course, is Europe. And if we take seriously what Putin was saying about the collapse of the Soviet Union in '91, and I believe he is serious because he was saying this several times under different circumstances, that this is his major tragedy, the collapse of the Soviet Union, and that he is going to correct the historical mistake of '91 when the Soviet Union collapsed. And that's what he's doing. And so if we take this as it was said, right, then we have to understand that the important part of this program is Europe. And if we think about glory or history, and if we think what glory means for Putin and what history means for Putin, then it's, of course, the dissolvement or destruction of NATO, the dissolvement or destruction of European Union, and the recreation of some form of the Soviet Union or Russian Empire, whatever call it. This doesn't really matter how this new state will be named or whether it's still going to be the Russian Federation. But Putin is a simple KGB guy who looks at glory in a traditional way of taking territories. And that's what he's doing, every time he has a chance to do this. And if the quickest way to take control over Europe to dissolve NATO, and if the quickest way to dissolve NATO is to place Trump as the president, forcing him to promote the program of dissolving NATO, then it's the quickest way to take control over Europe. And that's what we, I was going to say we are going to see. I hope we will not see it. I hope we will not see it. But everything what is done so far indicates that this is a direction in which Putin is trying to move with the help of Donald Trump.
You're listening to 91.7 FM, WSUW in Whitewater, Wisconsin. This is Rashkin Report. I'm your host, YURI Rashkin. My guest is YURI FELSHTINSKY, author and historian specializing in history of Russian clandestine service. YURI, can you say in a couple of words, maybe give listeners an understanding of what is this KGB agent, like a general KGB mindset, or who is what associations or maybe even stereotypes that one should associate with somebody who is a member of currently FSB, Federal Security Bureau, whatever it is?
Well, if we consider the KGB or the FSB to be an institution which was fighting for power for many years, and that's what I think was happening since 1917 when this organization was created. It was fighting for political control within the Soviet Union. And we have a lot of examples of this fight, and a lot of people within the Soviet Union were killed. I mean, thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people were killed as a result of this fight within the Soviet elite, within the Soviet nomenclatura. And then, for the first time in Soviet history, when former director or chairman of the KGB, Yuri Andropov, became general secretary of the Communist Party, this was the first time when KGB finally took control over the Soviet Union. Unfortunately for KGB, Andropov died very soon because he was an ill man. And the second time the chairman of KGB or director of the FSB became the leader of the state was 2000 when Putin became president. Now, the main idea is to take control. That's why when we are discussing whether this or that event could take place by itself without central control or knowledge of the president of Russia, I have always difficulties to believe that there is a possibility that Putin personally is not involved, whether we are talking about a minor killing or a major operation, because the whole history of KGB is about central control, and you know the Russian saying, of course, the initiative is punishable, but that's what this is about. In Russia, you try not to
show initiative.
Right, to show initiative. You just, it's always safer just to do what you are told to do. And this is especially so if you work for structures like KGB. So we have to be sure that whatever is happening with American elections, of course, goes through Putin. That if Sergei Kislyak is meeting Kushner or Flynn, that this is, agreed with Putin, that if Kushner goes then to Garkov, then of course this agreed with Putin. And from Putin's point of view, this is very important because that's what's difficult to explain, especially that's what's difficult to explain to Americans. From the moment General Flynn takes the first payment of $11,250 from the first Russian structure working legally here in the United States, Putin knows that Mr. Flynn is his agent. From the moment Trump is getting overpayment of 54 million from Russian billionaire Rybolovlev, connected, of course, with good ties with Kremlin and Putin. Trump looks at him as his agent. The moment Kushner is meeting with Gorkov, whatever they are discussing, we do not, of course, know what they discussed. Putin knows that Kushner is his agent. If you ask Flynn, Trump, if you ask Flynn in August of 2015, if you ask Trump in 2008 when he received this 95 million payment, if you ask Kushner whether they consider them to be agents of the Russian government, they probably sincerely will tell you no, but this does not change anything. What's important is how Putin sees these people. And now, since Putin considers those people to be his agents, he knows that his power over them is actually unlimited, because Putin may create any type of documents and information now which ruin those people completely. And all these people, from Flynn to Trump to Kushner, they know this as well.
How do you see Attorney General Jeff Sessions fitting into that, and the testimony that he just gave to the Senate committee? Do you consider him also to be a Russian agent, or is he a misguided Southerner?
Well, I have to say, again, choosing between yes or no, I have to say that no, and I was relieved. Seriously speaking, I was relieved to hear from him that he never had any normal, meaningful meeting with Kislyak, that he probably saw him like 3 times or whatever, 10 times, somewhere around. This doesn't really matter. But he never actually talked to him. And if this is so, I'm relieved. I mean, of course, we may consider the possibility that Sessions was lying under oath, but that's not. I'm not ready to discuss this at this point. So I'm trusting him. I mean, my intention is to trust him. And what surprised me, and this is surprising, what surprised me that he never heard about the country named Russia. This was surprising for me, because this is difficult to believe. And this leads me to a conclusion that from probably day number 1, he knew that Russia was involved in trying to influence American elections and trying to help Trump and trying to damage Clinton. But because he knew this from day number 1, he decided to be very, very careful, and basically told to everybody that, look guys, I do not want to hear the word Russia from you. Never, under any circumstances. And I think that's what he was trying to explain to us, that during all his involvement into campaign of Donald Trump from day number 0, the word Russia was never mentioned. Now, I have difficulties to believe this part of the story, but that's how I read what he was telling us, that since he knows that that's where the danger is, since he knows that there is a good possibility that Trump is going to be impeached because of Russia, he wants to be, safe from day number 1, and he wants to be sure from day number 1 that this unknown country to him, which we call Russia, never mentioned during the campaign.
So in Sessions' globe, there's just no Russia. There's just,
no,
right.
Okay. It just doesn't exist.
Yuri, how do you feel then?
Never heard of it, never mentioned, does not know what we are talking about. Not a single of his assistants ever mentioned this to him. Not the FBI director, not President Trump. We just never discussed Russia, period.
That's encouraging. Not really. The story came out that I wanted to get your take on. There was a leaked report from NSA, National Security Agency, saying that Russia was involved in actually trying to hack our actual elections, and they possibly got into as many as voter databases of 39 different states. Do you, at this point, question the integrity of the November elections, and how worried are you about future elections?
This is a very interesting and very developing story. In 2000, of course, in Russia, or actually even in 1996, when Yeltsin was running for president of Russia, in both cases, presidents won with, 1%, 2%, 3% votes. And the suspicion was in Russia in 96, and this was an issue which was raised by Zyuganov, who was, of course, chairman of the Communist Party of the Russian Federation and who was competing with Yeltsin for power, that Kremlin was cheating. And this was probably so, we have to say. The same is true about elections of Putin in 2000. He won with the advantage of like 2-3% of votes. Possible, but difficult to believe. Then at one point, when Putin already was the president, the Russian government issued a law transferring a computer which calculates the results of votes from the Central Electoral Committee to the FSB. By law now, the computer which calculates the votes is controlled by the FSB, and if I'm right, I might be wrong, but if I'm right, he's actually placed like in Lubyanka, where the central FSB office is. So, what I'm saying that for the FSB, the idea that you should care about the ownership of this computer is a major one. So, in other words, they do understand that if they check this computer and if they check results, if they control results, then they make correct results. And that's probably what is happening in Russia. And this is, we have to say, we are so cynical now that this is not surprising us at all. I mean, we do expect that the FSB would correct results if this is necessary. Is it possible that they were trying to do the same with computers in other countries? Yes, of course, this is possible. Is it dangerous? This is extremely dangerous. And the reason why this is dangerous is because if you are able to secure that your candidate or your agent would win, then you are going to have difficulties to check whether the system was tampered or not. And that's what we are seeing here in the United States now, because Republicans won, and they would like to have it this way, right? Now, we do know that Russia intervened into American elections. This is kind of common knowledge now. I have to tell you that in the very beginning, this was not common knowledge at all. And basically, the whole Republican Party was saying that no, that this was not the case, that Russia didn't intervene in our election. So now we passed already this step, right? Now we know this is confirmed by Comey under oath, that Russia intervened into our elections. It was said yesterday by Sessions that it seems to be, as he noticed, Russia intervened into elections. Again, this is not what Sessions was saying before, but at least now it is a common knowledge that Russia tried to influence elections. The question is whether they succeeded or not. Here, unfortunately, we have no way to check it. I mean, there is no way we are going to check what was the level of this intervention and whether Russia influenced the elections in terms of votes or not, unless we find out that they actually found the way to get into computer system. At this point, it seems to be, or we have suspicions that they were trying to do this, but we do not have actually proof that this was done. In other words, we do not have at this point a proof that in a computer system of state blah blah blah, the results were actually changed by Russian hackers who went into system. If we will able to prove this, we will face a major crisis. Because if, for the sake of this conversation, it could be proven that that's precisely what happened, I even cannot imagine what we should do then. There is no answer to this question. And for this reason, I think everybody kind of praying that this did not happen. Because if this did happen, then we are in major trouble.
But at least at this point, we have no definitive proof. We have suspicions. We know Russians tried because it would make sense that they would try. We just don't know if they or how or where they succeeded. Right. Yuri, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your perspective and educating the listeners and myself always. Part of the reason I enjoy doing this is because I get educated. Looking forward, what kind of developments are you expecting, or what are you expecting to see, or kind of what's the future like, even if it's a week or two or a month? What do you think?
Well, I would follow money, the old easiest way to investigate. I would try to see what Flynn knew about money he's getting from Russia and from Turkish businessman Alptekin. There is more information the way I see it. There is more information which is available now, which tells me that he probably didn't work on behalf of Turkey, and indeed from day number one was working on behalf of the Russian government, because in 2009 he was a part of a group of 3 people who received a loan from a Russian bank, Swissbank, of $150 million, and this loan was never returned. Actually, the loan itself was received in December of 2007, and it seems to be that by 2008, this loan was actually stolen. And one of 3 people who controlled this amount of money, which was received by the from the Russian state or Russian government, was Turkish businessman Alptekin, whose name we heard in connection with $530,000 paid to General Flynn. That's how we know about this story, because American law enforcement agencies started to investigate the financial situation around Flynn in 2015, 2016, and then it became clear that since August 2015 he was getting a salary of $11,250 per month from Russia, and in 2016, after his return from Russia, he suddenly started to get this huge amounts of money from Ekim Alptekin, who positioned himself as a Turkish businessman, and he is actually a Turkish businessman, but this is not the whole story about him. The whole story about him is that in December of 2007, he was a part of a group of people, of 3 people, who got a loan from Swissbank of Moscow in the amount of $150 million. This is a lot of money, which was never returned. So I think we have a case, or at least I think we have a reason to claim that $530,000, which Flynn received from a Turkish businessman Alptekin, actually is the Russian money as well. So, and there is more about Alptekin. So I think we should investigate Flynn. If you ask the developments or directions where we should go, I think number one and the major one is Flynn, because he probably may tell you us like 50% of the whole story. I think the next question which should be asked is about finances of President Trump, starting with a $95 million sale of property in Florida in 2008. And, you know, we probably may start to ask questions about finances of Donald Trump Jr., who was heavily involved in real estate operations in Russia, or with Russians, I probably should say, since 2008. There are a lot of questions. There is a question about payment of which was made to Trump in 2013 in connection with Miss Universe event. And again, the question is, it's normal that Trump received money for this, but the question is whether he received more or less before and after, and if the Russian payment, for example, is higher, then I would claim that this was a form of bribe or payment to Trump for some future activity. There is a lot what we have to investigate, and that's why I'm saying that we are just in the beginning stage of our investigation. But there are unfortunately, there are two possibilities and two directions. One is the Watergate scenario, which is known to us, when Nixon, was forced to leave presidency, and 46 people went to prison because they were connected to illegal activity of Nixon. The other one is nevertheless that our attention will be switched to a major problem which will save Trump and his presidency. And this is a dangerous way, of course, of saving presidency. But that's
so like a second 9/11 kind of a thing, or some new war or something like that.
I would try even to be more specific. The opportunity for Trump, which I see as a kind of natural, is the military conflict with North Korea, which we do not like. I mean, you probably do not like a single person in the United States who likes North Korea, their government and the system, and who trusts North Korea. And North Korea is a dangerous, of course, country.
Unless Trump would come out and say that he likes North Korea, then lots of Republicans would be like, we like North Korea too.
Well, this probably will be the safest way to deal with North Korea. So that's what I'm afraid of. I'm still afraid of the situation when we are distracted with a major military conflict somewhere like in North Korea or somewhere like in Iran, and Trump will use this military conflict to distract us and to switch our attention to that military conflict from the issue of Russian involvement, and Putin will use this opportunity to correct mistakes, historical mistakes of '91 when the Soviet Union collapsed. That's what I'm afraid of.
Yuri Felshtinsky, thank you so much for being on Rashkin Report, and we'll see how things develop. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're listening to 91.7 FM, WSUW, in Whitewater, Wisconsin. You're listening to Rashkin Report.